Schaeffer Cox, Symbiotic Lies. The first step towards getting better is admitting you have a problem. America has such a huge problem that it can no longer function. It appears to me that there are two groups who are somewhat mutually culpable for our present national dysfunctionality. Each group's contribution to the mess is kind of understandable when you step back and look at it, but that doesn't relieve us of our now urgent duty to mend our ways if we are going to survive as a free people. These groups are the politicians who are constantly telling lies and the average American who wants to be lied to. Of course, there's a lot more contributing to our problems than just these two groups, but they account for a good portion of it, so I'll focus on them for a moment. The lying politicians. These guys are a different breed of cat, and I'm not excusing their institutionalized deceit. But let's be honest. The only reason they are out there selling lies is because people keep lining up to buy them. The politician's goal is to be famous and influential. He's just trying to get elected to the aristocratic caste so he can indulge in the privileges associated with the position. He can't very well do that by running around telling the ugly truth. So every few years he has to put on his makeup and go on tour de schmooze, where he tells people whatever fantasies they want to hear. The politician knows it's all fake, knows it's all a fake show, but it's what sells. So he does it like a first-class whore. There are one or two political characters who aren't like this, who tell the ugly truth and don't pretend to have the silver bullet in their back pocket. If you'll just vote for them one more time. Let me read that again. There are one or two political characters who aren't like this, who tell the ugly truth and don't pretend to have the silver bullet in their back pocket if you'll just vote for them one more time. But it's a lonely road for an honest guy who doesn't join in on the self-deluded chorus being sung by the establishment. Those guys get their eyes pecked out by the centralized media, their teeth pulled out by bureaucrats who feel threatened by their honesty, and primary voters tend to shun them as party poopers. The industry standard for their fellow politicians is to disavow the guy that stands alone, and maybe even take a few cheap shots at him so that you appear palatably conventional. Now I'm speaking directly to the political figures who have a conflicted inner man who's honest and brave and humble and self-sacrificing, who's still strong and alive under the utilitarian skin of pandering sophistry that keeps you in the game. You know who you are. You can play the same old game, the same old way, and you'll have lots of company, but what you are working for is as fickle as a bird on your windowsill, and all the popularity and supporters, the praise of the shallow media, the people in government sucking up to get on your good side, it's all going to flutter its little wings and be gone in one day. Then you'll be left alone with nothing but the knowledge of who you are. I'm not asking you to lose all influence by becoming some no-talent compulsive truth blurter. Let me read that again. Oh... I'm not asking you to lose all influence by becoming some no-talent, compulsive truth blurter. No-talent, compulsive truth blurter. I'm asking you to make a long-term investment in a durable credibility by leaning to say honest things, even when they're painful to say. Some examples might be $1 trillion in bank bailout money disappeared. We don't really know what happened, but we think it got stolen. We don't know how to fix the economy. We can help a few of our friends get rich, but in the big picture, the stuff we do pretty much just makes things get worse. We got tricked into sending the military to fight a war in Afghanistan so the CIA's opiate producers could have a better place for their poppy farms. Also, it cost way more than we expected, so we don't have enough money to pay you that retirement we promised. I can understand if you're mad. Coming clean with the people may feel like political suicide at the moment. But would you rather be remembered as the first guy to tell the truth or the last guy to admit the truth? Bruce Springsteen already beat you to the punch with his new album, The Lies Aren't Working as Good as They Used to, and it looks like admitting how bad off we are so we can start working through it is the next big thing. I'm asking you, for the good of the country, for your own good, start being honest about the situation. First with yourself, then with us. It will make a difference. Believe that. Now for the average American who wants to be lied to. It's perfectly natural to gravitate towards what we want to hear and avoid upsetting facts, but we have really let ourselves go lately. We Americans have seen our consumer mentality creep into our personal politics to such a great extent that instead of searching for hard facts and asking logical questions, we simply shop for whatever opinions we feel the best to hold. We think to ourselves, usually subconsciously, that as long as there's food at Fred Meyer and our city isn't on fire, that everything is hunky-dory. The problem for those who adopt this kind of carefree waltz through the complexities of life is that their first clue that something is wrong is when Rome is burning. Of equal importance is the fact that the only reason the aristocratic power-grabbing malefactors were able to get so out of control that they sent Rome up in smoke was because people like us turned a blind eye to their escalating mischief. This is where we're at today in America. We don't believe the government's mostly good because the evidence supports such a conclusion. It doesn't. We believe it's good. We believe it because we want it to be true. And it's just this sort of self-soothing presumption conceived in a factual vacuum that on the one hand keeps us from suffering any immediate personal disturbance, while on the other hand providing carte blanche to the more sinister facets of human nature that tend to congregate in and around positions of unaccountable power. The truth is so over the top bad that when a normal, honest person first sees it, it's literally incapacitating for a while. That's fine. A good person should be stunned and shocked by the government's current conduct. But all too often, the knee-jerk reaction to the overwhelming awfulness is to retreat back into willful ignorance and denial. We may even attribute this retreat to skepticism. But truth be told, we are being the opposite of skeptical. We are acting like a wife whose husband is cheating on her, who finally just says, "I don't want to know." The two of them then live in a sort of mutually understood state of pretend circumstances. They figure this is preferable to the truth because the truth will devastate their entire home and family. But a relationship sustained by deceit can't last, let alone be healthy. The time has come for us to go ahead and openly acknowledge that we are in an unhealthy, abusive relationship with a government that doesn't respect us and constantly deceives us. We've got a long way to go to get back to being a dignified people who treat ourselves and others well. But well begun is half finished, and we can make it one step at a time. That's how you climb Everest, McKinley, or any of the big ones. One little step, then a moment of rest, then another little step. The moment is climbed almost incidentally while you are tending to the next 2 steps and the next 3 breaths. The next little step for you and for me is to have enough self-respect to call a spade a spade. Don't panic about what to do with the truth once we admit it. That's what makes people despair, give up, and descend. Just take the next step, then catch your breath. Let's take a step together by looking the bull in the eyes on a few hard things. Congress doesn't represent us. They represent their corporate sponsors because that's who put them in office. The only way the government is going to be able to pay us the retirement dollars they promised is by switching to a new currency, then paying us in obsolete US dollars that nobody wants to take. Sadly, it's going to be less work for us to make other arrangements than it is to get the government to pay out in a meaningful way. The CIA, NSA, DEA, and other large portions of the intelligence community have broken off from the federal government proper and are now a law unto themselves and answer to no one. They achieve this by generating their own revenue streams through the production and distribution of illegal narcotics, mostly Middle East opiates and Mexican methamphetamine. This effectively ended Congress's ability to act as a check and balance under the separation of powers doctrine, whereby Congress could withhold funding from agencies that stonewalled congressional inquiries or otherwise refused to submit to statutory or constitutional restraints. These agencies, now awash in their own drug money, have told Congress and their corporate sponsors to get bent. We, the people, don't even enter into the equation other than as the end consumer of the drugs. The flood of immigrants coming across the Mexican border will likely cause nationwide social and economic turmoil. But the only reason they are stampeding into the U.S. is because the DEA, working in partnership with the Sinaloa drug cartel, turned their home into an unlivable war zone. The liberals didn't ruin this country. The conservatives didn't ruin this country. Joining one group and hating the other is a cop-out. The truth is, both groups have plenty in common to live together happily. The ones who can't live in peace are the people from any persuasion who want power over others. The CIA created Al-Qaeda in the 70s and 80s to cause problems for the Soviet Empire. They funded them, trained them, and directed their operations. Al-Qaeda continues to operate as a subsidiary of the CIA today. Fighting Bashar al-Assad in Syria, ISIS and Al-Qaeda are the same. They're mostly comprised of useful idiots, but the CIA holds a controlling interest. All of this homeland security buildup and the militarization of the police is for regular people like us. The government is spying on you. You do have something to hide, even if you are an honest, law-abiding person, because the people who took over the system are dishonest, law-breaking predators who prey on honest people like us because it's easy. And when they fully crack down on us, people with liberal values and people with conservative values are both going to have to let the other just be who they are, so we can work together to stop the people whose only value is total control. The reason all of the domestic news outlets are always covering the same story in the same way, like they're performers in some carefully choreographed Broadway show, is because they all get their marching orders from DC. They will promote the left-right blame game, but never criticize the overall system. You have to read foreign newspapers to get that. There's a good chance I will sit in prison until the federal collapse is accelerated, when all the officials who already have a toe in dive into crime full time. The internal realization that the feds are insolvent will trigger the stampede. There's also a good chance that many thousands of you will join me before this runs its course. Friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. When the enemies, the feds, have accumulated over all over the world, finally get sick of drone murders, kidnappings, coups, economic sabotage, drugs, spying, and lying, they are going to team up on America and beat down the bully. When this happens, they will not take kindly to us saying, "No, that wasn't us, that was the feds." Even though it's sort of true, they are going to say, "Well, it was your dog. You knew it was vicious. You let it get off the chain. We're holding you liable," and they will be right. Asking the government to comment on their misdeeds is soliciting a lie, and that's all you are going to get. Whether it's General Keith Alexander or your local police chief, the ugly truth is obvious. So asking them to explain things means you are looking for an explanation other than the obvious one. The multinational banking conglomerates who issue nearly every country's currency are more powerful than the governments that they effectively own through debt structures. Even the feds, as mighty as they are just a mid-level enforcer for the global central bankers. This isn't some complex conspiracy. It's just the nature of wealth and power that more isn't enough. The banking powers that be will not stop until they hold a controlling interest in every government, every economy, and every human life. They will snuff out the flames of freedom, beauty, and creativity one person at a time until there's nothing left but cold, numb slaves who never see the fruits of their labor and are unable to choose their own path. The bankers know that as the American people get wise to the racket, we will become a powerful multi-generational holdout. This is why they restructured the post-9/11 government into a militarized domestic aggressor, then bombarded it with an intensive internal propaganda campaign to convince it that the American people are a dangerous enemy who needs to be spied on, crushed, and subdued. The feds have been tricked into attacking their own countrymen by foreigners who don't want Americans bucking Slave Bank Incorporated. And the plans they have for us and our children, it's not complicated, it's just repulsively sinister.